Hello everyone. So in this video I'd like to talk to you about some real world stuff related to annuities. So recall, what are annuities? Annuities basically involve you either making constant cash payments for a certain number of time periods, or you receiving constant cash payments for a certain number of time periods. Here, so this timeline is depicting payments as depicted by these negative signs over here. And here these are receipts. Now, when you are making cash payments over a certain number of time periods, that typically involves you receiving some inflow at time period 0. So there's typically some cash inflow at time period 0. So this would be an example of something like a loan. When you go and take a loan out from a bank, you get some money today. So there's some cash inflow happening at time period 0. And then for the privilege of having that amount today at time period 0, you make certain payments towards that loan. So money goes out afterwards. In contrast, when you are looking at an annuity, well, you'll be getting some payments in the future. That typically involves you actually making an investment of sorts at time period 0. In other words, in order to have the privilege of receiving some cash inflows in the future, you have to spend some money up front. So there's usually some cash outflow. That happens at time period 0. So I'm going to write a negative sign over here. So now if I ask you, look, can you give me some real world examples of an annuity like this? You'd be like, yeah, I can think of plenty of situations where we see annuities of this type. Any situation, in fact, where an individual has taken out a loan and is now making payments would be an example of an annuity like this. So, for example, if you've taken out a mortgage, if you have a car loan, if you have a student loan, then you are making these constant monthly payments and you're scheduled to make these for a certain number of months. So that's an example of an annuity of this type. But do we see any examples of annuities of this type in the real world where you would be receiving some constant cash flow in the future for a certain number of years? Well, it turns out, yes. There are financial advisory firms out there like Edward Jones, Fidelity, Vanguard, Nationwide. These firms basically offer different types of investment products that you can invest in, and one of the products that they offer is annuities. What that basically involves is that if you go to someone like Fidelity, you'd be like, hey, here's some money that I'd like to give you today. So here's my investment, and in return, what I want you to do is give me some constant cash flow over the next few years for a certain number of years. So these are known as simple income annuities. There are a lot of variations of these annuities, which I won't go into the detail of. But the main reason why these financial advisory firms advocate that you buy these annuities is because these can help safeguard your retirement. So here's an excerpt from an article that appeared in Barron's. The article basically is titled, How to Protect Your Retirement with Income Annuities. And it basically goes on to say that, look, financial advisors and retirement experts, so people at Fidelity, Vanguard, Nationwide, Edward Jones and all, they have long advocated having some guaranteed source of lifetime income to supplement Social Security. And generally speaking, the best way to create a guaranteed income stream is through a simple income annuity. What is that? You basically take and invest a lump sum amount and give it to your provider. So these would be your providers. And the provider in turn will turn it into a stream of payments either right away. This would be an example of an immediate annuity because the cash payments start coming in right away. Or you could buy a deferred income annuity. Deferred income annuity, as the name suggests, is when you pay some money lump sum to someone at Fidelity or Vanguard and say, hey, I'm investing this money with you right now, but please start making me these cash payments like 3, 4, 5 years from now. So these would be deferred in that sense. And the reason might be that you might be doing this, you might be buying this annuity at the age of 60, thinking that you'll be retiring at, say, the age of 65, and that is when you want your cash payments to start coming in. Now, you might take a look at this and think, yeah, this makes sense. If you're looking for some risk-free guaranteed income source during your retirement, that it probably makes sense to go and buy something like an income annuity. Well, it turns out that most people in the US, at least, the way they save for their retirement is not by going individually to these financial advisory firms. Rather, they save through the 401k plans that are offered by their employers. Now, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of what a 401k plan is, but put very simply, when you go work for your employer may offer something like a 401k plan, which is how you save for retirement. And what that really is that from your paycheck, a certain fraction, and you can choose how much of that fraction is, a certain fraction or percentage goes towards your retirement. Your employer may also put in some funds, so there might be matching. If you're putting in like 7% of your paycheck, your employer may also match that amount as well. But the main point is that all of that money that gets accumulated over here, that eventually gets invested in a portfolio of different types of stocks and bonds for the most part. There can be other types of investments here as well, but stocks and bonds are mostly what is over here. Now, 401k is an example of what is known as a defined contribution plan. Defined contribution plan. The key here is on contribution, well, and on defined as well. What that really means is that how you're saving for your retirement is by making a defined or set contribution. What that means is that when you retire, you don't have any guarantees on how much income you will have for your retirement. Why? Because even though you made determined or defined contributions, how much money you will get in your retirement will be a function of how well your investments performed. If the stocks and bonds that you invested in as part of your retirement portfolio, if this didn't perform very well, well, then you won't have enough money. On the other hand, someone else, for the same contributions, depending on when he or she is retiring, may have a whole different amount of income, right? So here, things are risky in the sense that by the time you retire, you don't know how much money you will have and whether or not that will be enough to last you for the rest of your life. Now, this is in contrast to what are known as defined benefit plans. There was a time when there were defined benefit plans that were offered by employers. This, as the name suggests, had more of a guarantee to retirees, because depending on how much your salary was while you were working and depending on how long you had worked with an employer, your employer would say, look, once you retire, I will give you a defined benefit. This benefit is a function of how long you worked for me and how much you were earning. But basically, this took away the risk from retirees, because going into retirement, you knew exactly what your benefit would be. 401ks are defined contribution plans, not defined benefit plans, which means that retirees bear the risk of not knowing how much they will be getting in their retirement and whether that will be enough to last them their lifetime after retiring. Now this, as you can imagine, poses a problem for people who are primarily saving for their retirement using their 401k plans, but then are also interested in having some guaranteed income during their retirement. It would be nice if you could have both, but turns out you can't. Why? Because as it turns out, annuities are not currently part of 401k plans. In other words, if you are primarily saving for retirement using for your 401k, your 401k mostly goes into stocks and bonds, which are uncertain or risky investments. you do not have the option to invest in something like an annuity as part of your 401k plan. That is how things are right now. Fortunately, this is now being discussed by government officials, and it seems like things may change in the near future. So what I want to do is show you an excerpt from a Wall Street Journal article that I was reading just 2 days ago from the day of this recording. It says BlackRock examines ways to bring annuities to 401ks. Well, what do you know? So it says, look, the current retirement system is falling short for many Americans as traditional defined benefit pensions have been replaced, just as we said, by defined contribution plans such as 401ks. As a result, millions are now at risk of outliving their retirement savings. So we just talked about it. People have uncertain amount of money for their retirement by the end of their 401k horizons. And secondly, people are just living longer, and so there's a greater chance that you may just end up outliving your retirement savings. And so it would be nice to have some guaranteed income like the kind that comes through annuities, right? And so that is why some financial firms and government leaders argue that guaranteed lifetime income products such as annuities could be one way to help retirees, because they're saying annuities would enable companies to incorporate an element of old-fashioned pensions, like these defined benefit pensions, which provide regular checks into the 401k type plans. And so it turns out that companies like BlackRock, by the way, is the largest money manager in the world with about $6.5 trillion worth of assets under management. And so BlackRock is lobbying to bring annuities to 401k plans. And this actually is happening because just last month, so May 2019, actually the House passed a bill making big changes to U.S. retirement system as well. So this has sort of been ongoing for the past few years. But this is again an excerpt from a Wall Street Journal article. Basically what's happening is that lawmakers have been discussing many retirement changes. And why is that? Because as life expectancy is rising, policymakers and employers are realizing that the standard 401k plans are not doing enough to help retirees make the money last. And so this House bill that was passed, the article says this passed by an overwhelming House majority and is going to be taken up by the Senate before it heads to President Trump. But this bill basically would encourage 401k plans to offer annuities, which is basically, if you think about it, a type of an insurance contract, right? Because you're sort of paying, call it a premium to your financial advisory firm and saying, look, in return, I want guaranteed income for the amount of time I live after I retire. And so this is why I thought it would be nice to share this information with you. This is real world stuff happening related to annuities right now. In the near future, we might see annuities becoming part of the investment products that are offered in the standard 401k plans, which means that retirees might have the option to invest in something like annuities to get guaranteed income during the retirement phase of their lives.